And we're back for our UFC Fight Night Des Moines, Iowa. Full card predictions this weekend from the Wells Fargo Arena. We've got a top 5 bantamweight matchup between Corey Sandhagen and Figueiredo, and maybe the most compelling matchup on this entire card comes in the co-main event between Reinier de Ridder and Bo Nickal. So we're going to talk about every single one of these fights and predict all of these fights here on Greedo Plays MMA. And before we get into the video, folks, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more weekly UFC predictions here on the channel. Again, trying to get to 1,000 subscribers here, so let's get that done. And also tomorrow, we're going to have our PFL World Tournament number 4 predictions. It's going to be the light heavyweights and the heavyweights tomorrow in the co-main event, or in the main event, sorry. Mr. Wonderful Phil Davis taking on Rob Wilkinson. Co-main event will be Vladimir Moldavsky versus Sergey Bilostiny. Make sure to check out that video, same time tomorrow at noon Pacific time. And also on Greedo Plays, the other channel, a daily NBA and MLB best bets. Go make sure to check that out over there. Okay, first of 12 fights tonight, and we got to start in the women's weight classes. By the way, last week we went 11-3 on that card over in Kansas City. Shout out to Ian Machado Gary surviving in the 5th round. Carlos Prates just, forgets how to throw punches in the last, minute of that fight. Hey, shout out to Abus Magomedov, by the way, cashing as a huge underdog. I can't believe that guy's going to be ranked now. I like a boost, but man, that's something. Anyways, we start in the flyweight division with Juliana Miller and Ivana Petrovic. Guys, Juliana Miller is 3-3 and in the UFC. That just doesn't seem real. I thought we were past the days of, 500 or lower fighters fighting in the UFC, but there's a fighter next month. Oh God, it's not Rayana Manda, it's her opponent. She's Alice Allardine. She's 9-7. If you remember, Shanna Dobson at one point in time fought with a losing record in the UFC. Carly Judas, I believe, is now 3-2, but was once 2-2. It's just, why is Juliana Miller still in the UFC? 3-3, I get it. She's a former Ultimate Fighter winner. She was 1-1 at the time when she won the Ultimate Fighter, beats Brogan Walker by TKO to win the season, but then back-to-back losses since against Veronica Hardy and Luana Santos. Both of those were in 2023, the Hardy fight, losing it by unanimous decision, where she just got out-grappled the entire fight, and against Luana Santos actually finished her in the first round by TKO. Just not the best look, let's just be honest. Again, Luana Santos finished Miller on the feet. Now, Ivana Petrovic just lost to Jamie Lynn Horth, which I guess, I don't know. It's just, this is so low level, guys. What Petrovic did well in that fight is that she grappled. Jamie Lynn Horth, I guess, outstruck her. It was a bad fight. Don't waste your time watching it. I think Jamie Lynn Horth just got the decision because it was in Canada. I had Horth to win. I think Petrovic probably actually should have got the nod. It doesn't matter. She submitted Liang Na in her second fight in the UFC, which is great. I just, that's not that impressive. In her first fight, she lost to Luana Carolina, which, I guess I think she was a pretty big favorite in that fight. She's -300, but Petrovic was not what we thought she was. Former Aries FC champion, and she comes into the UFC, and she's just not that good. Let's just be honest. Is she better than Juliana Miller? I think. But I don't know. I wouldn't bet on this fight. The odds, right? Petrovic, a favorite, -245. Miller, the former Ultimate Fighter winner, coming back at you at +200. Yeah, I think Petrovic probably wins. I'll take her by decision here. I'm a little bit concerned about Petrovic going to the takedown because that's, again, where she's best, I think. At least in the UFC, she's been best on the ground. She's looked to her ground game, and we know Juliana Miller does actually have a decent jiu-jitsu game, at least, outside the UFC. That's where she looked really great at, obviously, in the Ultimate Fighter. She was billed as a grappler, and she did finish Brogan Walker on the ground. I'll give her that. But I think Petrovic is the all-around better fighter, and on the feet as well. Again, Petrovic hasn't been what she was in Aries, and again, this has always kind of been a primary grappler, but I do think she has a better striking game than Juliana Killer Miller, who has not killed anybody in the Octagon. I'm going to take Ivana Petrovic to win this fight by unanimous decision, but it's a low-level women's fight. It's just on the card. Actually, I don't know why it's on the card. Is Juliana Miller from No, she's from San Diego. How did this fight get on a non-Apex card? I don't know. Ivana Petrovic by decision. Do not bet this fight. Next up, we go from the lightest weight class in the UFC to the heaviest weight class. Let's move to the heavyweight division. Minnesota's Thomas Peterson takes on Don Tail Mays, training at Jackson Wink, obviously, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm going with Thomas Peterson here. Dontel Mays is one of those just mid-heavyweights who probably will never be cut because he's kind of always in these fights with these other, guys who are trying to climb the ranks. Last fight was a loss to Walter Walker. Walker submits him in the first round back in February on the Cannonier Rodriguez card, and all of a sudden Mays is already back. Fight before that, he loses to to Shamil Gaziev. Gaziev beat him by decision. Mays' last win was Kyle Machado by unanimous decision in a fight where he dropped Machado, and that's when I realized, all right, Machado is just not that good. Okay, this is what this is, guys. This is probably the best way I can put this fight and just talk about this fight in the sense that this is the Dontel Mays test, okay? It's like he's a gatekeeper to not being just a borderline crap contenders guy. I'm serious, because that's really what Dontel Mays is. If you can't beat Dontel Mays, you're either getting cut or you're just going to be a bottom feeder for the rest of your UFC career. Because legitimately, look at all of Dontel Mays' victories in the UFC. Roque Martinez was never anything. Josh Parisian was never anything. He fought Andrei Arlovsky before Arlovsky got on his way out. That was by far Mays' best win. He actually knocks out Arlovsky in that fight. I was kind of impressed. He then proceeded to lose to Hamdia De La Huab and Augusto Sakai. No, that was actually before the Arlovsky fight. Sorry, he lost to Rodrigo Nascimento after that, who, by the way, is fighting for PFL later this week, and we're going to talk about him tomorrow. So how does Nascimento get cut? How does Alexander Romanov get cut? But we still have to watch Dontel Mays fight, who's 11-8. You main evented Nascimento last year. Romanov's been on main cards time in and time out. He's actually been ranked. I just don't understand. Now, surprisingly enough, guys, Dontel Mays has been in the rankings recently because when they cut Romanov and when they cut Nascimento, who, by the way, has beat Mays twice, they needed somebody to go in the top 15, and that guy was Dontel Mays at one point. Now, obviously, he's dropped out the rankings because Walter Walker submitted him. But yeah, like Dontel Mays is a borderline top 15 guy. And when you compare Thomas Peterson, who's fighting him tonight, who I actually think is going to beat Dontel Mays, I don't think Peterson's anywhere close to the top 15. I think he's going to beat Dontel Mays because I do think Thomas Peterson is a better striker. He's a way more active fighter, way more active striker, and should be able to get into Mays' face and really use his jab effectively in this fight. And just use his shots at least to close distance, because Mays will have an 8-inch reach advantage in this fight. I think Peterson, though, is just a better and cleaner striker personally. But Peterson's nowhere close to the top 15. He's not. So that just kind of goes to show like how weak heavyweight is right now. If Dontel Mays is a guy we're looking at to be a somewhat, outside the rankings type of guy. Because Peterson's 1-2 in the UFC. After finishing Chandler Cole in the Contender Series, he loses to Jamal Pogues, he beats Mo Usman, and then he gets knocked out by Shamil the Blob Gaziev. And also, guys, Peterson just got knocked out like 3 months ago. It was early February where Gaziev knocked him out. Now, I'm not too concerned about him getting chinned against Dontel Mays because it's Dontel Mays, but Mays did knock out Andrei Arlovsky. I just think, again, technically sound, Peterson's the much better fighter. I think he, again, gets off the much better shots, and I think he's the more accurate and quicker striker as well. Mays probably throws harder, but I think everywhere else Peterson has him beat. But I wouldn't bet this fight. Minus 240 for Thomas Peterson just doesn't feel good. It's just like, all right, yeah, he'll probably win, but the guy got knocked out 3 months ago. Dontel Mays has experience on him, and Mays is going to be the much bigger guy. I think this gets understated a lot. Dontel Mays is 6'6". He doesn't really use that height and reach to his advantage, but I think Peterson's able to win this one. I'm going to take Minnesota's own and Thomas Peterson to win this fight by unanimous decision. I think, again, I don't think we see a knockout here. Peterson's not really a knockout type of guy. We saw in the Usman fight him just kind of outstrike him the entire fight. Maybe he goes to the wrestling some. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. But I think Thomas Peterson gets this one done by unanimous decision. Next up, we move on to the lightweight division. Gaston Bolanos takes on Kwang Lee. I'm going with Gaston Bolanos to beat Lee here. Both these guys are fairly new to the promotion. Bolanos, though, 2-1 in the UFC. For Lee, he is 0-2. Back-to-back fights against Chris Gutierrez and Long Jiao. The Gutierrez fight, a short notice fight after fighting in LFA. He gets the call to the UFC. Lose to Gutierrez, who's coming off a split decision victory yesterday against Sexy Mexi John Castaneda. But expectedly, Kwang Lee gets dominated in the Gutierrez fight. Then he fights Long Jiao, and Jiao finishes him in the third, a fight that Long Jiao was winning for most of the fight. That was in November 2024 in Macau, China. For Bolaños, 2-1 in the UFC. I will be honest, his victories aren't the most impressive. They're Aaron Phillips, who has not fought, if I'm not mistaken, since the Bolanos fight, in which Bolanos won by decision. A loss to Marcus McGee, but we know how good that guy is. And then a win over Cortavius Romeus by unanimous decision. Romeus, though, has since been cut by the promotion after his last fight, a loss to Chang Ho Lee. Okay, so Bolanos is 2-1, but it's not a great 2-1. But at the same time, Kwang Lee 0-2. If he just had lost to Chris Gutierrez, I'd be like, all right, you know, I could see him winning this one. But the Long Jiao fight, and again, I don't know how good Long Jiao is going to be, right? This is a guy who has a lot of experience. He's 27-9 in professional MMA. But at the same time, Chang Ho Lee beat him, and he was very just iffy on the road to the UFC, right? You know, I thought Kwang Lee was actually going to win that last fight, and I was heavily disappointed in his performance. I think Bolanos gets him tonight. I think he's the much better striker, and I think he's going to find that power shot a lot easier than Kwang Lee can. Again, I saw Lee get outstruck in his last fight by Long Jiao. The Cruz Gutierrez fight, we saw Lee outstruck in that one as well. The guy does have a chin, like I will give him this. Like, he took some shots from Long Jiao in that fight and ended up, again, going until the third round where eventually he got dropped and finished. But I just think Bolanos is the better striker. Yes, Marcus McGee knocked him out, but Marcus McGee is really solid, right? That's a guy, again, on a pretty good roll right now in the UFC, 4-0, coming off that win at MSG against Jonathan Martinez. That's a good fighter, Marcus McGee. So I'm really not concerned about that Bolanos loss. Former Bellator fighter, but as of late, right, since post-pandemic, the guy is 3-1 with 1 win in Bellator, then 2 wins in the UFC. Unfortunately for Bolanos, here's the thing. I think he beats Kwang Lee. Again, I think he's a better striker. I think he's going to be able to find his shot more efficiently. And I actually think Bolanos will win this fight by late round stoppage. I'm going to go late second round TKO for Gaston Bolanos here. I think the opportunity is going to present itself for him. And I just don't think Lee's on his level personally. But here's the thing, right? Bolanos wins this fight, and then now Lee just kind of enters that list of guys that Bolanos has beaten in the UFC who are no longer in the promotion. Phillips, Ramonius, and now Lee. So that's why I think it's really important too that Bolanos does find that finish, because this is going to be a fight that will set itself apart from the others. Because if he just wins another decision against Kwang Lee, like, yeah, again, you're 3-1 in the UFC, you're somewhat of a prospect, but you haven't shown the power that you had in Bellator. Yeah, you're a decent striker, you can win fights that way, but there's nothing really to write home about. They're giving him a huge opportunity here in front of a crowd. I believe the first crowd he's fought in front of in the UFC, right? He's been in the Apex every single fight so far, and I think he's going to be able to pick up the victory. I'm going at Gaston Bolanos to win the fight by unanimous decision. I would be a little bit concerned with the grappling of Kwang Lee, not going to lie, because Bolanos has been taking down some already in his UFC run. Ramonius took him down, Marcus McGee took him down, Aaron Phillips took him down as well, and that's, you know, really that was his kryptonite, I'd say, in Bellator as well. He got subbed in a fight over there in the Bellator cage twice, actually. Daniel Carey got him by submission before Bolanos eventually avenged that loss 3 years later. But I think Bolanos should be able to keep the fight on the feet, and once he does, I think the damage he does against Kwang Lee will make it kind of hard for the Vietnamese fighter out of Minnesota to really deal with anything. So I think eventually, again, Bolanos will find his way to a finish. I'm going with the Peruvian fighter training out of Dublin, California. Gaston Bolanos will win the fight by second round TKO. We move on now to the strawweight division. I'm surprised this fight, honestly, is this low on the card. We get Jillian Robertson versus Marina Rodriguez. Rodriguez 1-4 in her last 5 bouts, with the only victory being a TKO victory in the retirement fight for Michelle Waterson-Gomez, who got, of course, a video package for her entire career like Anthony Smith did last night at UFC Kansas City. That was something. By the way, I'm still waiting on Stipe Miocic's goodbye and farewell package. Oh, wait, didn't they put that on an Apex card when he didn't even fight on that card? It's just the disrespect they show to Stipe, and yet, you know, and again, I have nothing against Michelle Waterson, and, you know, contrary to popular belief, I don't actually dislike Anthony Smith. It's just like, we couldn't give Stipe a farewell in front of Madison Square Garden, but we can, you know, Joe Rogan's crying over Michelle Waterson's retirement, or was it Esparza's retirement he cried for? I just, like, show some respect to Stipe, man, greatest heavyweight ever, but don't get me started. His all-time, you know, longest reigning heavyweight champion thing is gone now because John Jones with 1 defense has had a longer reign now than Stipe. Just fight Aspinall, bro. I don't know what to say. Anyways, Marina Rodriguez, Jillian Robertson, got on that little tangent there. Yeah, Robertson should win. Marina Rodriguez, last fight wasn't fun. Lucindo beat her, right? Rodriguez wasn't able to do what Lemos eventually did to Rodriguez a couple months later on a main card of a pay-per-view. But Yasmin Lucindo was able to go to the takedown a lot, and she saw a lot of success grappling against Marina Rodriguez. And a lot of fighters, honestly, have seen success on the ground against Rodriguez. Hell, look at that Vina Jandiroba fight. Now, Jandiroba might not be entertaining, but she's going to be fighting for a world championship in her next fight. I'll be surprised if she's not. And Jandiroba took Rodriguez down and kept her on the ground the entire fight. Over 12 minutes of control time in that fight for Jandiroba. That's just been the pathway to success and the easiest way for success against Rodriguez. You take her down and really limit anything she's able to do. Hell, even Jessica Andrade went to that in the first round of their fight at UFC 300, right? It is really easy to grapple Marina Rodriguez. And who is she fighting? Oh, a fighter who only does that, Jillian Robertson. Look at Robertson's last fight at the Apex against Luana Pinheiro. 5 for 17 on the takedowns, but hell, still over 8 minutes of control. Over half of that fight was spent on the ground with Jillian Robertson controlling Luana Pinheiro. She drops the second round of that fight, but wins the first, and ultimately wins the third with control time that entire round. That's what Jillian Robertson's going to do, and she's not entirely just a boring, fighter that's going to try to ride the entire fight. She's going to look for submissions. She's going to try to hunt those, and again, she, I believe, holds the record for most wins at 125, I think. I know she's back down at strawweight now. But Jillian Robertson with 9 submission victories. She's 12-6 in the UFC, 15-8 professionally. And Robertson, guys, is still only 29 years old. She came into the UFC off of The Ultimate Fighter, I think. Was she not in The Ultimate Fighter? Yes, she was. It was the one that Gaethje and Alvarez coached back in 2017. So, Robertson's been in the UFC now for 8 years. She came in as a 21-year-old. She's 29 now. She's like Angela Hill. Kind of. I think Robertson's going to be better than Angela Hill. I get it. Hill had her short time in the top 10, top 8-ish. I think Robertson's eventually going to find her way to the top 5. She's only 29 still. Is she ever going to win the belt? No, but her grappling gives a very tough challenge to a lot of fighters, and the UFC are, giving her a huge opportunity now. Because, right, Robertson has always kind of been in that Angela Hill spot, unlike the rare Angela Hill top 5 appearance. She's always just kind of been around. She's going to be on undercards. Okay, Robertson, right, is going to keep stacking up those wins in the UFC. This is a fighter who one day will likely join the 20-win club, which is kind of, exclusive right now. It's a short list of guys is what I'm looking for there. But anyways, right, she's always kind of never been taken as a serious threat. She's number 12 in the weight class, guys. She beats Marina Rodriguez. She's a top 10 fighter, and we're looking at, okay, well, then Jillian Robertson's going to fight like a Mackenzie Dern. She's going to fight a Amanda Ribas. She's going to fight a Yasmin Lucindo. There's actual big fights for Robertson coming up, and I think she beats Marina Rodriguez, right? Rodriguez has really struggled grappling, and that's all Jillian Robertson does. I know Rodriguez has good striking, but I just don't think she's able to keep this fight on the feet. And I think eventually Jillian Robertson, will she find a submission? Rodriguez was submitted by, who was his? Lemos TKO'd her. That wasn't the standing triangle choke. That was Andrade against Lemos. Rodriguez has never been submitted. Yeah, I'm going to go Robertson by decision. Yeah. Because, okay, I know Lucindo's jiu-jitsu hasn't looked the best, but, if she's not able to submit Marina, if Andrade wasn't able to do that, if Carlos Esparza wasn't able to do that, I know Esparza's not the biggest finisher on the ground, but I don't think Robertson's going to be the first. Even though if there was a fighter to do it, it would be her. I'm taking Jillian by unanimous decision here. Yeah. Give me the Canadian by decision here over Marina Rodriguez. Next up, we move to the middleweight division. We have got the Ultimate Fighter winner in Ryan Loder, Man of Steel, taking on Azamat Bekoev here. Bekoev, the Russian, a huge favorite, minus 320. Ryan Loder, the American, coming back at plus 260. It's just because Azamat's pretty damn good, and it's a really tough draw for Ryan Loder here, a guy who was supposed to take on Cody Brundage in his last fight. I mean, in a way, does this not feel the UFC is kind of punishing Ryan Loder for dropping out of that Brundage fight, and in turn, giving Brundage Julian Marquez in a co-main event in which Brundage won, and now he's bought himself at least 2 more fights in the UFC. Are the UFC just pissed at Loder for dropping out that fight because they kind of wanted to put him in a co-main event on a fight night and really get him, get eyes on him? So now they said, you know what? Okay, just go fight this 19-3 Russian who hasn't lost since 2021, and it's been on a run. Now, okay, I actually don't think Bekoev's the prospect a lot of people think he is. I think he's good. This guy did go 5 rounds with Dylan Budka. I thought he won the fight in LFA, but it was a close fight in which he was a massive favorite in. Now, his last win over Zach Reese, a good victory in Los Angeles. ultimately something we expected, right? I didn't really think Zach Reese had a chance in that fight. Bekoev, the much better fighter. We thought he was going to win by decision. He ends up winning by first round TKO, right? Gets the fight on the ground with the takedown and just dominates and goes ground and pounds Zachary Reese out of there. Good victory for Bekoev, obviously, right? But that's Zachary Reese. You now get Ryan Loder, a guy who, is pretty damn good. This is a really good wrestler who we saw in that Robert Valentin fight, in the Ultimate Fighter finale fight, obviously, right? Get Valentin down, get him in a crucifix, and just give him hell on the ground, right? I mean, again, you're going to look at that significant strike total and see, okay, Loder 42-1, but again, that's just ground strikes. But that was a dominant performance for Loder. Got the fight down in the second round and just did not let Valentin back up. Or in the first round, didn't let him back up. In the second round, did the same exact thing, right? I just think Asmat's likely better. I don't know. I am interested in the odds here. I am. Because we did see Bekoev struggle a little bit with Dylan Budka, who, if Dylan Budka fought Ryan Loder, I think we'd all feel pretty confident in Loder winning that fight, right? Budka's a guy who's not been cut by the UFC. He's fighting an AFP in Toledo, Ohio in a main event. Okay, cool. Like, right, Dylan Budka's, way out the UFC at this point now. So, I am a little bit concerned. I don't think Bekoev should be this big of a favorite. I think minus 320 is kind of ridiculous here because we know Loder is good, right? You saw him in the Ultimate Fighter, very impressive there. This guy's got one loss, and that's in 2023 by split decision. This guy's a really good wrestler who's going to find his way to top control, and he's going to throw punches once he's on the ground as well. The thing with Bekoev, again, though, he's kind of Loder too, though. Like, that doesn't entirely make sense, but I feel like these guys are kind of replicas of each other to a sense. Again, not to a T, obviously, but I just think Bekoev's Sambo is going to be too good in this one. I don't know. He's an ATT guy, but I think he cross-trains in Russia, if I'm not mistaken. Former ACB fighter, never won the championship over there. Or ACA, excuse me. I just think he's better. I think he's better than Ryan Loder. I think we're going to see a very competitive fight, and again, I don't think the odds should be anywhere close to where they are, but I think Bekoev is going to eventually, wear out Loder in this one and just do more damage. I'm going decision. Yeah, Loder is 34, going to be 34, so I mean, I don't really know if we can call him a prospect at this point. Came into the UFC very late, and obviously they had to give him the contract because of the Ultimate Fighter. But I think Bekoev's going to get it done. I want to see more out the guy, I'm going to be honest. Because the LFA run, yes, it was good, right? Beats Budka for the vacant championship or the interim championship, then becomes the actual champion in the victory over Lucas Fernando, wins that fight by decision, then knocks out Chauncey Foxworth, which does give me it gives me some confidence with the striking game in Bekoev, and I think he does have better striking in all than Loder. But at the same time, I think he's probably going to go to his grappling because I think he's going to try to, just outwill Loder in this fight. So that's what makes it interesting to me. I think Bekoev is better, though, as a whole. Again, on the ground with his sambo and also with the striking, too. I just want to see him against more UFC caliber guys, right? Like, I think Ryan Loder is a good test for that. But really all we're basing this off of is what Lucas Fernando, who is all right, contender series guy, lost to Cesar Almeida, and then Dylan Budka, right? So I want to see him against more guys like Loder, and I think Bekoev's going to get this one done. I'm going decision, but if he gets another finish in this fight, I'll be damned. I mean, this is a guy, again, who really goes for it on the ground, so we'll see. I'm going Bekoev here, though, by unanimous decision. So yes, we've taken all favorites so far. We go to our next one, a fight in the Bantamweight division. Yana Santos takes on Miesha Tate. Two former title challengers, one former champion in this fight in Miesha Cupcake Tate. I don't know what to expect here, I'm going to be honest. I didn't know Miesha Tate still fought, I'm going to be honest. She's 38. She fought in 2023. She was an underdog against Julia Avila. I actually picked Avila to beat her because I thought Tate had literally nothing left in the tank. But Tate wins, I remember watching that, in the nosebleeds of an Indiana Pacers game, and I was very shocked. And then all of a sudden, she's back against Yana Santos. I just kind of thought Tate was going to retire. I thought she should have retired after she lost to Lauren Murphy on Long Island. Because, guys, people forget, all right, if Miesha Tate beat Lauren Murphy, she's probably going to get a shot at Shevchenko. That's just how that was at the time. Like, it was a very odd time. It was 2022. They were looking for challengers for Valentina, right? Alexa Grasso wasn't there just yet, and Miesha Tate dropped down, and she was a fight away from the championship, but then she lost to Lauren Murphy, and now she's back at 35, which I think's her much better weight class. Again, losing to Lauren Murphy is horrible, but Lauren Murphy's back. She's fighting in Tennessee against Eduarda Maura. I think Maura is going to take care of her, if I'm being honest. But regardless, Miesha Tate's now fighting Yana Santos. I am a little concerned because I think Santos might be too strong for her. I don't know. Like, Santos, I'm going to be honest, I thought she was taller than 5'6". I'm looking at it again. Santos, they have as 5'6". They have Miesha Tate as 5'6" as well. I don't think that's right. I don't know. Again, who am I to question the UFC's official stat page? I think Santos is going to be a taller fighter than Miesha Tate, personally. I think she's, again, just watching them fight, I believe she's a little bit taller than Miesha. Maybe she won't be. I think Tate will struggle a little bit, though, again, with dealing with the size of Yana Santos and trying to get that takedown. Because that's where Miesha Tate's got to go in this fight, right? I don't expect Miesha Tate to try to go out strike Yana Santos at 38 years of age. Yana Santos, 35 in her own right, by the way, coming off of having a child. Now, she fought Chelsea Chandler in her last fight, winning that fight by unanimous decision, but we just saw Chelsea Chandler get knocked out in the first round by Jocelyn Edwards. So I put nothing into a victory over Chelsea Chandler, I'm going to be honest. I actually rate Tate's victory higher against Avila than Santos's over Chandler, obviously, right? I know Avila's now retired from the sport, but Tate went in there, actually got a finish, got a third-round submission against Avila in a fight again where she was a plus-money dog. I do question Tate's ability to really out-handle, I guess we can say, Yana Santos. But at the same time, Santos has struggled so much with wrestlers in her UFC career, right? Holly Holm is not even a wrestler, but Holly Holm in that San Antonio card where Vera and Sandhagen were in the main event just was relentless in her pursuit of takedowns. That was the entire fight, was Holly Holm, who is a boxer. She said, you know what, I'm just going to wrestle the entire fight. There is a clear advantage I have in the wrestling game, and she went in there, worked the body lock effectively, dragged Yana Santos down at will, and ultimately won the fight by decision, won at 30-27. That should be the exact game plan Miesha Tate has, and I don't think Tate's at a point of her career where she's going to try to test herself. Hell, we know why Miesha Tate's back. She's the money, let's just be honest. I mean, like, again, yeah, the legacy's there, but Miesha Tate's legacy was secured after her victory over Holly Holm when she won the Bantamweight Championship for the first time. She main evented UFC 200. She fought Raquel Pennington, basically said in her corner at the end of the second round, I don't want to do this anymore, retired, and now all of a sudden she's back. Again, I respect Tate for getting back into the fight game, but she's here just to win and, you know, make bank, which is good. I'm good for her. Go get your money. I'm serious. But again, relating this back to my point earlier, she's not here to test herself. She's going to go out here and do what she needs to do to win. And what she needs to do to win is take down Yana Santos and hold her down. She's not going to try to strike with, you know, Santos, who is a fairly well-credentialed kickboxer. Now, she couldn't finish Chelsea Chandler, though, and Jocelyn Edwards did in the first round. That is something, you know? Yeah, Santos knocked down Chelsea Chandler. Chelsea Chandler actually won the third round against Yana Santos. Yeah, I think this fight is very obvious in Miesha Tate's direction. Again, I don't think we're going to see many striking exchanges because Tate's going to want this fight down on the ground. And if the Holly Holm fight's any example of that, I think Miesha Tate should be able to have her way grappling with Yana Santos. I'm going with Miesha Cupcake Tate to win this fight to close out the undercard. I'm taking her to out-grapple Yana Santos, and we're going with Tate here by unanimous decision. We move on to the main card, and we start things off with an absolute banger. My goodness, what a damn fight. Jeremy Stephens, Mason Jones. Oh, man. Pure violence, man. I mean, this is just a war. I am so pumped for this fight. This is going to win Fight of the Night. I will be damned if it doesn't. Jeremy Stephens is back in the UFC. So the backstory behind this is, well, Jeremy Stephens, right, a BKFC fighter. If you saw his last fight, finished Eddie Alvarez, or got the doctor stoppage or corner stoppage in the third round against Eddie Alvarez, at the end of the third round against Eddie Alvarez, similar to the Jimmy Rivera finish for Jeremy Stephens in BKFC, and he's become a BKFC legend, let's just be honest, right? 3-0 over there, wins over Jimmy Rivera, Bobby Taylor, and Eddie Alvarez. He beats Alvarez after the fight in January. Conor McGregor enters the ring and says, you know, oh, we're gonna do this. Who the fuck is this guy? We're gonna fight, mate. We're gonna get in. I'm so ready. I can't do the Conor accent that well, but you know, I just gotta get me fights. I'm not gonna try. Anyways, right? Conor's calling out Jeremy Stephens. Is that ever gonna happen? Is Conor ever gonna fight again? No. He's calling out Michael Chandler for a stadium show. He's never gonna fight again. Okay. Jeremy Stephens though then gets a call from, or actually, I think I don't know if he called the UFC or the UFC called him. Regardless, Jeremy Stephens is from Iowa. I think he's from Des Moines, Iowa specifically. The UFC signed him for a one-fight deal. This is a one and done for Jeremy Stephens, and Stephens is saying that he's going to go straight back to BKFC after this. So this is basically just Jeremy Stephens' retirement fight in mixed martial arts. I don't know if he's going to get the Anthony Smith send-off, even though Jeremy Stephens has had a way bigger impact on the sport and way more memorable moments than Anthony Smith. But this is likely his farewell to the UFC, I think. Unless he wins and maybe they keep him around. Guys, stylistically, this is a very difficult matchup for him. It just is. Because Mason Jones, I think the first run that Mason Jones had in the UFC was just too soon. I just think it was. He was, 25 at the time where he fought Mike Davis. I remember watching that fight. I had online class watching Mike Davis fight Mason Jones like at 8 in the morning. And it was Mason Jones' first fight in the UFC against a guy Mike Davis, right, who doesn't fight often. That's still the case now. Back and forth war, man. Really good fight randomly on a Wednesday. Yes, that fight was on a Wednesday. And Mike Davis wins the fight by unanimous decision, but Mason Jones was really, impressive in that fight, I thought personally. Actually outstruck Mike Davis, statistically speaking. Second fight, fights Alan Patrick, no contest. It was a eye poke. Patrick knew he was going to lose, so he just said, you know what, I can't see anymore. It's a no contest. Mason Jones then goes on to beat David Onama, the same guy who beat Giga Chikadze yesterday. Now, did he really beat Giga Chikadze? No. Chikadze won rounds 1 and 3, and I feel very good about that. That's ridiculous. You don't win a fight, and I hate that this is how we're doing it now. You don't win fights by doing no damage. I don't care if you have control for the last 2 minutes of the fight. If you get 5 shots off in those 2 minutes, you don't win. I don't get scoring. And don't think I've forgotten about Ankalaev Pereira. I don't care that, Big Unk's the champion now. No, scoring-wise, I don't care. Pereira still won that fight, I believe. Again, I don't think it's a robbery, but it's just, I don't like the way we're going with scoring now. So same thing we said about Onama Chikadze yesterday. I thought Giga won the fight. The first 3 minutes on the feet, Giga was easily winning. He outstruck Onama very easily in that fight, but they gave Onama the nod. What are we doing? Anyways, Mason Jones beat Onama. He got it by decision, won it 2 rounds to 1. Mason Jones won that fight with his wrestling, something that Onama obviously did to Giga. By the way, he only got that takedown in the 3rd round because of a headbutt, but whatever. Anyways, Mason Jones then fights Ludovic Klein, loses a decision, and the UFC sees him at 1 and 2, and they say, you know what? All right, we're gonna cut you. Honestly, though, not the worst thing for Mason Jones' career. He went back to Cage Warriors, won 4 straight fights. In his last fight, man, a win over Michael Pagani out of Italy. Undefeated prospect at the time. Mason Jones beats him by unanimous decision. Now he's back in the UFC after going 4-0, back in Cage Warriors, right? This is a former Cage Warriors champion, by the way, 12-0 in that promotion. He now gets Jeremy Stephens. I think Mason Jones is going to be willing to oblige in a war, I think. If the Mike Davis fight in his UFC debut is any indicator, I firmly believe Mason Jones is going to be willing to throw down with Jeremy Stephens. I think so. However, I don't see this going too well for Jeremy Stephens. I don't know, guys. Mike, see, here's the thing about Mason Jones, okay? And here's the thing about BKFC too, right? Jeremy Stephens looks really good in bare knuckle, right? I don't entirely know the belt system. I don't know how far he is away from a title fight. I think they just kind of make fights as they want, I'm going to be honest. I think Ben Rothwell's right, the champion over there in heavyweight, obviously. I don't know if they have a 165-pound champion, but that's where Jeremy Stephens has been fighting over there, or 155/165, I guess. I don't know who the lightweight champion is in BKFC. I just don't, okay? I don't watch that closely. But I have watched Stephens' fights, obviously, but I don't know what's going on, because Connor's running it, and it just doesn't make sense to me. Anyways, guys, there's a difference between fighting those guys, like Eddie Alvarez and Jimmy Rivera, who are no longer in the UFC. And don't get me wrong, the Alvarez win, great victory. But the difference between that and then, fighting Mason Jones, who's a not washed, not 40 years old, in the prime of his career, and this guy's been scratching and clawing to get back in the UFC. Now, okay, Jeremy Stephens lost a boxing fight to Chris Avila, who's an 8-9 MMA fighter. I remember him from the UFC. He fought Artem Lobov and lost once upon a time. Now, I'll be honest, I do not follow the career of Chris Avila all that closely, but he he beat Jeremy Stephens in a boxing fight, then proceeded to beat Anthony Pettis, but then lost to Benson Henderson in a boxing fight, in a fight in which he was a minus 1,200 favorite in, and Benson Henderson beat him. Was this a tournament? Benson Henderson fought twice on this night. What the hell is even DAZN series? Like, is this KSI's thing? Or is this Aiden Ross's thing? I have no idea. No, this is Misfits. No, this is KSI. Okay. I think Aiden Ross thinks it's a joke, right? I think it is. Anyways, maybe it's not. I have no idea. The thing is, okay, right? Jeremy Stephens losing fights to Chris Avila, who lost to Benson Henderson in the big 2025 in a boxing fight. I don't care how many wins Avila's racked up. Like, you beat Anthony Taylor, sure, but like, I don't care. Dog, if you can't beat that guy who is a less than 500 MMA fighter who, you know, lost to Artem Lobov and Jamal Emmers, who's underrated, don't get me wrong, but still, like, what are we doing? And also, by the way, it's not like Jeremy Stephens went from the UFC straight to boxing, which people are forgetting. He went to the PFL, guys, and he went 1-2 in the PFL. Arguably could have gone 0-3. I thought he beat Miles Price, but it was a very competitive split decision where he beat Miles Price. Okay, he lost to Clay Collard, who is washed now, if you saw his last fight against Alfie Davis. He got submitted by Natan Schultz, which, by the way, if Mason Jones wants to go to submission, he can go to that, right? Yeah, it's not like Stephens just, you know, didn't have that PFL run. He went to the PFL, and he wasn't all that great. You know, guys, the Clay Collard fight, by the way, tremendous. Don't get me wrong. One of the best fights PFL's ever put on. That was a great fight back in 2022. But he only fought one season there, and he wasn't all that great. He went 1-2, right? And in the UFC, he went out losing to Calvin Kattar, brutal knockout, and then lost and submitted by Mateusz Gamrot. Now, Gamrot's still in the top 5, I understand, but it's just you haven't fought elite MMA guys in a while. You got subbed by Natan Schultz, who is just kind of old, got cut from the PFL for potentially, you know, rigging a fight with Hoosh Manfio, and we have not seen either of those guys since. Just a weird circumstance, but I don't think Jeremy Stephens is beating Mason Jones here. I think Jones is the all-around better guy, and I think Jones is going to get a finish. Again, this is a guy in his prime. I think he finishes Jeremy Stephens in the second round. I know it's in Stephens' hometown, but I think Jones is going to get him here. I'm going with the Welsh fighter, Mason Jones, to finish Jeremy Stephens in the second round by TKO. So that's how we start the main card. We now proceed to the bantamweight division. We've got Cameron Smotherman taking on Siri Sidey. Little shocked at the odds, if I'm being honest. I didn't think Smotherman was going to be a dog here. At least I thought we were going to get fairly even odds for this fight. Smotherman 1-0 in the UFC, coming off a victory over Jake Hadley, who, believe it or not, I think is probably in line to win the PFL season this year. Real quickly, quick shout to my PFL viewers, and we're going to get to that tomorrow, obviously. Guys, Jake Hadley is, I don't even know if we can call this a world championship anymore. He's in a Final Four at bantamweight with the PFL with Marceli Alves, Justin Wetzel, and Mando Gutierrez. Yeah, Jake Hadley is going to become a world champion. What is going on? Anyways, Jake Hadley had a Scottish Twister finish over Mateus Matos in his last fight, and Cameron Smotherman was the guy to send Jake Hadley on his way out the UFC. That wasn't Hadley's last fight because he had the... no, it was his last fight. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, because he beat Lafran and then he lost to Cameron Smotherman. So... you know, that's a good victory for Smotherman, man. It is. You know, not a crazy, you know, like, impressive performance, but he wins the fight in terms of, like, skill. Like, it's not like he, you know, it's not like, you know, we're still talking about that fight now, partially because it was in the Apex, but it's a one-sided affair. Smotherman gets him, man. He wins the fight on the feet. He controls the clinch and the grappling, the limited exchanges we got there. I was really actually impressed with the Smotherman victory there. And now we get Siri Sidey, who is a favorite here. Really? I don't know. Sidey's 1-1 in the UFC, a win over Garrett Armfield in his last fight by split decision, a fight that you can really make the case Armfield won. Armfield easily wins the third round, and I thought Armfield won the second too. So I just don't know how Siri Sidey gets that nod. I had Sidey to win the fight, but watching it live and watching it again, yeah, I thought Garrett Armfield probably should have got that one. Fight prior to that for Siri Sidey, he loses to Ramon Tavares by split decision. Great fight. Tremendous fight in Canada. It was the rematch of the Contender Series fight that got stopped early. Tavares, though, gets his get back in the UFC. But Sidey could arguably be 0-2, but at the same time, you could say he could be 2-0. Like, that Tavares fight was very close, and I remember I had money on Sidey at the time. Sidey outstruck Tavares, but the thing is, Ramon Tavares just did way more damage with every single shot he landed against Siri Sidey. Not to say Sidey's chin's bad at all. It's just that, you know, Tavares hits very hard. But I'm a little shocked that Smotherman is a dog here. I don't know. You can look back at his Contenders Series fight against Charalampos Grigoriou, in which he lost. He got knocked out in the first round. Grigoriou, no longer a UFC fighter after back-to-back losses to Chad and Hellinger, and Toshiomi Kazama. But, since that Grigoriou loss, right, Smotherman comes back, jumping knees Mando Gutierrez, and I don't really know where we can put Gutierrez in all this. He picked up a really good victory over Francisco Nuzzi on the PFL card earlier this year. He's a plus 235 dog. Gutierrez really damages up Nuzzi on the feet and eventually finds his way to the back in the submission in the first round. And that's the guy that Smotherman knocked out with the jumping knee in the first. After that, a split decision win over in Fury, then an Anaconda choke win over a 4-6 guy. But the Jake Hadley win's good. Guys, I'm going to play the underdog here. I don't understand the odds at all. I think this fight's going to close at about even. We're getting plus 150 on Smotherman. Yes, sign me up here. I really don't understand these odds. I think Smotherman's going to win this fight. I think Smotherman's got better striking. Yes, Series City hits hard as well. Smotherman's a pretty clean striker, though. Yeah, he gets chinned sometimes. Grigoriou knocked him out. But I do like the striking game out of Smotherman, and on the ground, too. Not horrible. He's not really a grappler. I think he can do it. We've seen it before in Fury. But for the most part, I think we're going to get Smotherman on the feet here. City's not a guy who wants to grapple, obviously. I mean, that's where he could have lost the Garrett Armfield fight. So we're going to see a striking fight. And that's a striking fight that I ultimately think Cameron Smotherman's going to win. I like the chin on City, right? Looking at that war against Tavares. And I think this is all the making to be a war as well. So that's why this got the main card spot. I just don't know if it's going to be able to live up to the war that is going to be Jeremy Stephens versus Mason Jones. But this is a great way to continue off the main card. I think Cameron Smotherman's going to get this one done, though. He's the younger fighter, and he's an underdog. So sign me up here. I'm taking Cameron Smotherman to win the fight by unanimous decision over Series City. Should be a good one, though. We're going to stay now in the bantamweight division for Montel Jackson versus the undefeated Daniel Marcos. Marcos continues to find ways to remain undefeated. There have been many times in which that guy has not been a favorite to win a fight. He has been, in close fights, and yet he's still undefeated. I don't think he beat Adrian Yanez. I don't think he did. I thought Yanez won that fight. I think a lot of people thought Yanez won that fight. Damage-based scoring, Yanez should have gotten that nod. He just should have. Anyways, though, we get Marcos, who's still undefeated, 17-0, taking on the dangerous, and I mean dangerous, Montel Jackson. He's just a guy that gets forgotten about in this weight class a lot. He's an 8-2 UFC fighter who has not lost since 2020. Sure, the fights he has had have been somewhat easy fights. Let's just be honest, right? We can talk about the entire career of Montel Jackson dating back to that loss to Brett Johns. Okay, he beats Jesse Strader by first round knockout. Strader, not a UFC caliber guy. JP Bays, not a UFC caliber guy. He drops him, I think, 4 times in that fight, wins a decision. Julio Arce beats him by decision. Okay. Hani Yahya, not a striker. Montel drops him in the first round and knocks him out. Damone Blackshear, that's a good fighter. Coming off another win yesterday over Altang Ali. Montel Jackson knocked him out in the first round in 18 seconds. That's the power Montel Jackson has. That's the precise striking he has. The guy's really good. I don't think Daniel Marcos is able to win a Daniel Marcos type fight against Montel Jackson because I just think he's going to get clipped coming in. I just think so. Yanez hit him hard. Yanez had him on the ropes at times. But in Marcos' all of his fights, he's been able to kind of walk down his opponents and see a lot of success. Now, not in the Davey Grant fight, but it is what it is, right? The fights that Marcos has had, Simon Oliveira, Castaneda, Yanez, and again, we thought he lost the Yanez fight. Marcos, yeah, he was concerned about what was coming back his way, but I don't really think any of his opponents other than Yanez really made him pay for that because Yanez was throwing right back at him. The thing is, I think Montel Jackson is better than Adrian Yanez, and I firmly believe that Montel Jackson's a top 15 guy in the weight class. I just don't think he's been provided the opportunity yet. But now you're 33 years old, now or never really. I mean, this is the time where you really make that push into the top 15 of the weight class. I guess he is ranked exactly number 15. I personally would like to see Montel Jackson fighting up the rankings, but this is the type of fight you need to have against an undefeated guy in Daniel Marcos who is going to take Montel Jackson's ranking if Jackson is not able to fight him off here. I think Marcos gets hit too much, though, for him to beat Jackson. I just think so, because if Jackson hits you that many times, and I know Yanez is a crisp boxer who has some pop in his own shots as well, but the way Jackson hits, it's a lot for 135. And the reach this guy has, he's huge for the weight class. He's 5'10" with a 75.5-inch reach. He's going to have 6.5 inches of reach on Daniel Marcos in this fight. And he's got 3.5 inches of height on him as well. I think when Marcos tries to close the distance, he's just going to continue to get caught. I think Montel Jackson has the power. He generates a lot of power for his frame too. And he's just such a tough guy to deal with at this weight class. I think Montel Jackson gets Daniel Marcos out of here early, personally. Just because of kind of that, I don't know how to put this, that like phone booth style of fight that Marcos fights, you know, back and forth, trading. I just don't think it's going to really work against Jackson. I get it. Marcos is an undefeated guy. You know, that's great. It's kind of I don't want to say it's a padded 17-0, but it's not really a tested 17-0 yet. Montel Jackson's going to test that, though. He's going to, and he's going to hit you very hard. Again, I thought Yanez beat Marcos. I think Montel Jackson's going to beat Marcos. Marcos never been chinned before, right? Never been dropped either. I think Montel Jackson's that first guy, and I want to see this guy fighting top 10 names, because that's how high I've been on Montel Jackson for a long time. Again, he just hasn't been given that opportunity. That opportunity starts right now with a first-round knockout victory over Daniel Marcos. He will take his O, and by the way, undefeated fighters in 2025 in the UFC have just not been that successful. So I'm going to take Montel Jackson to be the first guy to beat Daniel Marcos, and he's going to do it in emphatic fashion. He's going to beat Daniel Marcos by first-round knockout. Let's move on to the UNC fight in the featured bout of the night in the welterweight division. Santiago Ponzinibbio takes on Daniel Rodriguez. I don't know, I'm split on this fight. Dare I say, you know, I crapped on the Randy Brown, Nicholas Dalby fight. I'll be honest, I did last week. And that fight ended up being one of the best fights of the night, if not the best fight of the last card in Kansas City. So I don't think I'll disrespect the Unks again and the guys who I said have no future in the UFC. And I'll be honest, I am still kind of adamant on that. I don't think Randy Brown's going anywhere, but I will give the guy a lot of credit. He's a fun fighter when he chooses to be a fun fighter, okay? That fight against Nicholas Dalby was very fun. I was glad I was wrong about that. By the way, I still had Randy Brown to win. I'm just saying I didn't think the fight was going to be all that great. This is one of those fights, okay. Personally for me, it's just I don't really care that much. I don't know. Maybe this is just me being, you know, all into the prospects now and watching the contender and watching the regional scene and whatnot, and just like seeing a 38-year-old Santiago Ponzinibbio fight a 38-year-old Daniel Rodriguez. These guys aren't, and I said this about Dalby, and I'll say it again, like, these guys aren't legends, you know. Ponzinibbio, well, he's not a legend, but Ponzinibbio's had fights. He's above Nicholas Dalby in terms of an all-time perspective. But, like, these guys aren't really all-time fighters. It's not even like this is, like, the retirement fight. There's no really end in sight for either of these guys, so they're kind of just welterweight fighters right now. They're just kind of in the top 25, just kind of hanging around, and they get to fight each other. Okay, so we can still break this down, obviously. Ponzinibbio coming off a really impressive victory over Carlston Harris, and I'll give Ponzinibbio this. He's in fun fights. He 100% is. And D-Rod as well, you know, D-Rod's going to give you a war sometimes. You know, I think Ponzinibbio is the much more fan-pleasing type of fighter, obviously. Look at the Carlston Harris fight, right? Back and forth war. Harris drops him in the first round. I'm thinking, okay, yeah, this is going to be a Carlston Harris win. Ponzinibbio comes back, though, in the third round and finds a way to that knockdown and to the eventual finish. A really good victory to kick off the year for Santiago Ponzinibbio, a guy who just saw his career derailed by a bunch of injuries after really the peak of his career, winning at home in Argentina against Neil Magny in 2018. I'll never forget that Li Jingliang fight, man. We were so pumped to see Ponzinibbio back, and he immediately got chinned. It was brutal. Anyways, Ponzinibbio gets Daniel Rodriguez here. I'm actually going to take Ponzinibbio to win. D-Rod, I haven't been impressed with D-Rod recently. He's always been kind of older, obviously, right? When he made this, you know, kind of run into the UFC, right? When we saw him fight Mike Perry and fight Preston Parsons and Kevin Lee in that split decision win where they robbed the Leech. This guy in his last four, though, right? They gave him step ups in competition recently, right? The Neil Magny loss. That's a step up. Get subbed. They give him Ian Machado Gary. Yes, that was an Ian Gary, you know, step up fight, obviously, and Gary knocked him out in the first round. Gaslam missed weight by 15 pounds and beat D-Rod. And then D-Rod barely got by Morono. I think Ponzinibbio is going to outstrike him here. Rodriguez has struggled a lot with the wrestling. Like Neil Magny and Gaslam saw a lot of success wrestling the guy. Hell, even Kevin Lee saw some success too. But I think the Argentine Dagger actually is going to win this fight stand-up wise. I wouldn't be surprised if he shoots, right? We saw him shoot someone, Muslim Salikov, in a fight where he lost by split decision. So don't be surprised, because, right, again, D-Rod has shown kind of a weakness there. But I think the all-around better fighter is Santiago Ponzinibbio. I think, you know, his striking has looked better than D-Rod's recently. D-Rod barely got by Alex Morono. Yes, the output was there, but, you know, Morono won that first round, and that was actually a split decision, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know what second round you give to Morono there, but anyways, I'm taking Ponzinibbio to win this fight by second round TKO. I think eventually it's going to catch up to D-Rod, and the striking out of the Argentine dagger is going to be too much. I'm going Santiago Ponzinibbio here by second round TKO. Let's move on to the co-main event. My goodness, what a fight. Here we go. This is big time. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't save this for pay-per-view. I'm surprised this fight's not in Canada next week. I'm surprised this is not on the Muradivashvili versus Sean O'Malley undercard, or main card, excuse me, at the Prudential Center next month. They're giving us this fight on ESPN2 on a fight night. I'm not complaining. This is a really good co-main event for a fight night card. The undefeated Bo Nickal fights on his first non-pay-per-view card against Reinier de Ridder. This is big time. Reinier de Ridder, you know him as maybe the greatest one championship fighter ever. Maybe. Demetrius Johnson, maybe. And again, I don't know the one lore that well, right? I don't know my one championship history all that well. But I know Reinier de Ridder won multiple championships, right? Beat Anlag Nasang twice for 2 different championships, right? I get that. Now, de Ridder came into the UFC, and I said it too. I was like, the guy's kind of just past his prime. I think he's good still, but he lost both of his belts. Comes into the UFC, beats Gerald Meerschaert in a competitive fight. A lot more of a competitive fight than we wanted it to be for RDR, but he wins. And then he fights Kevin Holland in a fight where we have even odds, and Reinier de Ridder went in there and did exactly what you're supposed to do to Kevin Holland if you're a grappler, right? Now, Holland looks refocused after that fight against Gunnar Nelson, and now they're giving Kevin Holland Vicente Luque. Call me crazy. I think Kevin Holland's probably going to be Vicente Luque. I think he's going to knock out Vicente Luque. Anyways, though, we'll get to that fight on the O'Malley versus Merab card. De Ridder's a really good grappler. The question is, though, and this is the question I think a lot of people have, can he take down Bo Nickal? No. What? He's not taking Bo Nickal down, guys. He's not. Now, the other question is, what happens when Bo Nickal takes down Reinier de Ridder? Because that's going to be there. Like, there's not many guys that Bo Nickal's not going to be able to take down, right? And I think if Bo Nickal wins this fight, I think we can honestly, I don't know if I kind of wanted to see Bo Nickal fight Khamzat Chimaev. I don't know why. I get the Nickal hype's not there anymore, even considering his last fight against Paul Craig, where he, didn't even shoot a takedown and really didn't look for a takedown. So, you know what, I'm just a striker now. I don't want to, deal with this jiu-jitsu. And good on Bo Nickal, right? You double your pay. You win the fight 30-27. It was not impressive. And honestly, that's why he finds himself going from Madison Square Garden to the Wells Fargo Arena or Center over here in Des Moines, Iowa, right? There's a reason for that. Let's be honest. Dare I say this fight might be the same? I have a weird feeling that Bo Nickal's just going to be striking with Reinier de Ridder all day long. I don't know. And yeah, de Ridder has a good, decent striking past. He's a grappler. We know that. And de Ridder, honestly, has some really good kickboxing skills too. But again, he's a primary jiu-jitsu guy. I don't know why I think Bo Nickal, though, might be able to beat de Ridder striking. Because, again, not because I think Bo Nickal's a better striker just straight up than Reinier de Ridder. It's just, we say this all the time, your wrestling makes your striking so much better. It's the part of the reason why Khabib Nurmagomedov dropped Conor McGregor. It's not because, okay, right, and this is the example I always use because it's the easiest one to use, right? Khabib's not a better striker than Conor. Nobody's going to say that. But because Conor was always expecting the takedown, Conor had his hands down waiting for Khabib to shoot. Khabib was able to hit him with a big overhand and drop Conor momentarily, right? That's what Bo Nickal's wrestling and, collegiate level, not just collegiate level, all-American level wrestling and, NCAA championship wrestling will allow him to have against Reinier de Ridder. Regardless of how good de Ridder's jiu-jitsu is, we know how great it is. You don't want to be on your back against this guy. It doesn't matter how great a jiu-jitsu you got. Yes, Bo Nickal might be a little bit green still in terms of trying to deal with submissions off his back because he has not fought a fighter yet who is going to really throw things up once he's on top, when Bo Nickal's on top. But I think the striking is going to really show itself out for Bo Nickal here. Will he finish Reinier de Ridder? I don't think so. I don't think he can get de Ridder out of there. Because I think there will be spots where Nickal's going to take de Ridder down. Don't get me wrong, right? I think what they have him doing at ATT with Mike Brown, right? I think he's going to be mixing up a lot of stuff. I think that fight against Paul Craig was too one-dimensional for Nickal in terms of showing, okay, yeah, I'm a striker now. I'm fighting one of the worst strikers in the UFC, but I don't really want to get stuck in a guard here, so I'm just going to strike. I don't think he can avoid that, though, with de Ridder. Maybe he can and just, stay on the outside and just, use that jab against De Ridder. But I think De Ridder is going to bring the fight to him a little bit more and obviously give him way more resistance than Paul Craig did on the feet. So I think there will be spots where, yes, the former Nittany Lion will have to shoot on De Ridder, and that's where I'm really interested to see where this fight entirely is going to go. I think Nickal is going to win those grappling exchanges in terms of, okay, let me make myself clear. He's going to win those exchanges where he finds that takedown, De Ridder threatens with something, albeit maybe a guillotine on the way in. Maybe, again, he gets some separation in the guard, looks to throw up a triangle or an omoplata. I think Nickal's going to be very cautious because that camp is going to have him prepared for every submission at Reinier De Ridder. On the flip side, Reinier De Ridder will win his fights by getting takedowns. He's not taking down Bo Nickal. It's just that will not happen. I will be damned if Bo Nickal gives up a takedown to Reinier De Ridder. I don't care how good of a ground fighter De Ridder is. He's not taking Bo Nickal down, So I think Bo Nickal keeps the fight on the feet for the most part, at least early, wins in the striking range, figures out, okay, I have De Ridder biting on everything I do. I can change levels. I'm going to get De Ridder to bite. I can really throw that jab and, really affect him if I'm going to shoot after. I think Nickal is going to, really try to work everything in this time around compared to his last outing against Paul Craig. And I think he will shoot in combination of the strikes too. And then then that's where I think we get interesting with the grappling. But I think Nickal is going to be cautious on the ground. And I just think Bo Nickal wins the decision. My mindset with this, Nickal's a big favorite, minus 280. The Tapology favorite is Reinier De Ridder. 54% of voters going with the Dutch fighter, 46% going with the American. And most of those voters are going by De Ridder by submission. My thing with this is, again, it's not like Bo Nickal just picked up MMA yesterday. He's been fighting for a very long time now. And he knows, and I'm sure ATT knows what De Ridder is and what he offers. He's not going to get stuck in anything stupid. I think Bo Nickal's going to win. I don't know if it's the most entertaining, but I think Nickal's got to stay undefeated to get into that top 15. Again, he's not going to fight Khamzat. I personally still want to see the Khamzat fight. I think Chimaev will 100% win. But I just want to see a guy that I think Nickal's going to have trouble with. Because, I'll be honest, I think De Ridder's a hard challenge for him, but I still think Nickal passes it. I'm looking at the top 15 now, right? This is the fight that gets Bo Nickal in the top 15 because De Ridder's 13. So let's just say Bo Nickal's the 13th ranked fighter after this. Okay, who's above him in the weight class? Paulo Costa. I don't think they want to do that fight. I think Nickal probably beats Costa. That's just an unnecessarily tough fight for no reason. Brendan Allen, Marvin Vettori, Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, Roman Dolidze, Jared Cannonier. Because you got to fight one of those guys to take your next step. I think it's going to be Brendan Allen. It will be Brendan Allen. Brendan Allen won't be able to sub Bo Nickal. His striking is not that good. That's the fight, okay, that gets Bo Nickal into the top 10. And then who's after that? I'm serious. Israel Adesanya. Then he gets the jump, right? I think Nickal's one fight away from a Adesanya fight, as long as Adesanya likely wins that proposed fight in the rematch against Sean Strickland, which actually, I don't think Izzy's going to win. Maybe, but still then, even if Izzy loses to Strickland, then okay, then you can warrant a Nickal Adesanya fight, which I think kind of has to happen. Nickal's been talking about that fight for years. Obviously, when he came into the UFC, Adesanya was the champ. I think that eventually kind of has to happen. I don't know. We'll see. That's far-fetched. Nickal's got to take care of De Ridder here, but I think he's going to beat RDR, and I think he'll beat him by unanimous decision. Let's move on to our main event of the evening. Corey Sandhagen, a minus 455 favorite here against Deiveson Figueiredo. I don't think he should be this big of a favorite, but I do think he's going to win a decision. It's just one of these main events that you kind of have to have it. Two top 5-ish bantamweights. Figueiredo 5, Sandhagen 4. They're top 5 bantamweights in the division. But ultimately, a fight Corey Sandhagen is going to win. Deiveson Figueiredo has to drop Corey Sandhagen and finish him, I believe, to win this fight. I don't think he's going to be able to win a decision. Again, actually for reference, Deiveson Figueiredo actually did win a fight against Brandon Moreno, and literally all he did in that fight was knock down Moreno, got outstruck at every single moment, but the power was the deciding factor in that fight, where ultimately, right, Figueiredo was able to bank 3 rounds because of just that power. He's not going to do that to Corey Sandhagen, though, right? We've seen Figueiredo at 135 for a while now, right? He is 3-1 in the weight class. He was a fight away from the championship. If he had beaten Petr Yan in Macau, he would have got a title fight. Now, Petr Yan deserves a title fight right now. Instead, he has to fight Umar because the UFC is giving Sean O'Malley an unnecessary rematch against Merab Dvalishvili in a fight where he lost 4 rounds to 1. Make it make sense. Anyways, Petr Yan and Figueiredo was interesting. Figgy, right, drops Petr Yan in that fight. They don't score to knockdown, but he flash knockdowns Yan, wobbles him. It is what it is. Other than that, though, yes, Yan did outstrike Figueiredo that entire fight, the entire fight, it was Petr Yan first to the punch, right? Coming out there, finding, being the first one to the punch, obviously, and just dominating. So again, with the exception of that flash knockdown that didn't end up getting scored, it was a one-sided beatdown. I won't say beatdown, it was competitive, but Petr Yan was dominant at the same time in that fight, right? He won fairly easily against Figueiredo, right? Figueiredo was always trying to time up and find that one big shot, but Yan was the all-around better striker, and he was finding his shots more efficiently. Okay. Figueiredo's other fights at bantamweight, Rob Font, he wins, okay. Garbrandt submits him. Garbrandt's just not on that level anymore. And then Chito Vera, Figueiredo drops Chito Vera, first guy to ever do it. Again, it shows you the power Figueiredo has. First guy to drop Yan, first guy to drop Vera, and ends up winning a decision. My thing with Figueiredo is, and hell, he won the fight against Vera because of the power, but that's a 3-round fight. Figueiredo's so dependent on his power. He is. He's dependent on it, and he gets knockdowns, right? Again, I will always circle back to the Anaheim fight at UFC 270 against Brandon Moreno. It's the third fight in the quadrilogy, where Moreno outstrikes Figgy the entire fight. But where Figgy ultimately wins is with the knockdowns. That's really all the success he has, right? But you got to give him the 3 rounds because of the knockdowns that he got in all of those 3 rounds, right? In each of the 3 rounds. But in a 5-round fight against bantamweights, who, let's just be honest, are better than flyweights, it's hard to beat them in a 5-round fight. A guy like Corey Sandhagen, who has seen power punchers his entire career. He's seen Marlon Vera, who I don't think's as good as Figueiredo personally. He's seen a guy like Song Yadong who's got pop, obviously not on the level as Figueiredo, but a Petr Yan too. Again, none of these guys, let's be honest, hit as hard as Figueiredo do, but Sandhagen is an incredibly tough guy to wobble. Petr Yan's the only guy to ever knock down Corey Sandhagen. And I think Figueiredo is going to hit Sandhagen hard. Don't get me wrong. I think there might even be a knockdown in this fight. Corey Sandhagen is just the much bigger fighter. Corey Sandhagen is going to have 5 inches of height on Figgy in this fight. He's so much taller than the guy. And I think the work that Sandhagen does, he's always throwing something, or he's always moving, is Sandhagen, right? He's always on the bike the entire fight. Now, again, Corey's never going to get a finish, it feels like. It's just not what he does. He had that one, the back-to-back streak where he finished Moraes and Frankie, right? He had the wheel kick against Moraes where he said early in the fight, right, he hits Moraes, I think it was a right, and he points at him, orbital broken, and eventually hits him with that wheel kick that barely clipped the top of the head. And then the disgusting Frank Yeager flying knee, which was gross, right? Since then, though, Sandhagen has not gotten a finish. Yeah, he stopped Song Yadong with the cut. But anyways, right, the Vera fight split decision should have been a unanimous, one of the worst scorecards of all time. And the Rob Font win in the main event just beat him by decision, right? Sandhagen wrestled that fight against Rob Font. He apologized because he was going into that fight injured. I remember that fight was in Nashville. He could wrestle he could wrestle Figueiredo. I don't really see it. I think we get a striking fight. I think Sandhagen kind of just pitter-patters his way to a decision. It might be harsh. I don't see it being the best fight, just because I think Sandhagen's always going to be in control. And I think really the story of this fight is going to be, okay, Sandhagen's the way better striker, right? Sandhagen is first to the punch. Sandhagen is, working the jab. And Sandhagen is throwing a lot more output than Figueiredo. But there's always going to be that moment where Figueiredo does throw that big shot, and maybe he does land. And it's going to be like some of those Cheeto main events where it's like, here we go. Like Sandhagen is, he's on the back foot. Figueiredo's hunting, as Figueiredo hits that stance where he's like, kind of like leaning in and, trying to, maneuver his way into throwing a big right? Because that's what Davison does. And there's going to be multiple moments in this fight where that does happen. But ultimately, yes, the way better all-around mixed martial arts fighter is Corey Sandhagen. I did dismiss the point of maybe Sandhagen wrestling. Thinking about it, maybe he will, in moments like that where Figgy is, kind of just waiting for that right and trying to deliver. Again, I guess I can call it a classic Figgy uppercut. I think Sandhagen can look to wrestle because, again, that's not Corey's game, but the Rob Font fight, and it was a really unexpected game plan. He looked really good wrestling Rob Font. It was a horrible, boring fight. But in terms of dominance and going out and getting your show money, great victory for Sandhagen. And actually, if I were Dana, wasn't really mad at all. Dana was like, all right, he was hurt, I'm glad we got a main event. Dana likes Sandhagen, I think. But the thing for Corey Sandhagen is, guys, he is a perennial top 5 gatekeeper. No, really top 3 gatekeeper. Sandhagen's going to be a top 5 fighter and continue to be a top 5 fighter for a very long time. He's only 33. He'll probably be in the top 5 for at least another 2.5 years until, you know, an up-and-coming guy gets him and then he fights his way down the rankings and he loses back-to-back fights, right? He lost to Umar, but that's expected, right? Umar outstruck him and out-wrestled him, but again, it's the threat of the takedown and the threat of the wrestling that will always make your striking better. Sandhagen's ranked 4. I don't see him ever getting beyond that point. Maybe he'd beat Sean O'Malley, maybe, but I think I'd pick O'Malley to beat Corey Sandhagen in a fight, right? I'm seeing that as potentially, you know, O'Malley's next fight after losing to Merab. I could easily see, okay, O'Malley loses to Merab, and then him and Sandhagen fight probably on a co-main event of a pay-per-view that goes 5 rounds, probably. Or maybe they go fight a main event with Sean. That's another thing. We'll get to that after the Merab O'Malley fight. It's like, what do they do with O'Malley next? Because Merab's a dominant champion who is talking about potentially going up to 45. He doesn't want to fight Volk, so probably not. Like, what does really happen with Sean O'Malley? The star power is gone. He's lost back-to-back fights to the champion. He kind of got given the rematch, too, after the champ beat Umar. Like, where does O'Malley go? Sandhagen's likely that next step, or honestly, the winner of this fight is likely next for O'Malley after he loses to Merab. Let's just say, like, November MSG co-main event or, you know, feature bout that goes 5 rounds. And I think O'Malley probably beats both these guys, I think. But I think Sandhagen is better than Figgy. Again, there is going to be moments in this fight where Figueiredo is going to deliver a big shot. But in every other moment, Sandhagen's always going to be throwing something. Sandhagen's going to be in his face, and Sandhagen is going to be faster as well. He's going to out-volume Figueiredo. That's the problem that Figueiredo falls into in a lot of his fights, is that he is kind of just he is just waiting for that big counter. He's waiting for that big shot to land, you know? And I just don't think, you know, look at the Rob Font fight where he wrestled Rob Font. I know, again, that's literally the same thing Sandhagen did. I don't think Sandhagen's going to give up a bunch of takedowns to Figueiredo, and I don't even think Figgy's going to try that. It's a 5-round main event. The odds are weird. It kind of makes me think, like, is there something we don't know about Figueiredo? Why is he a plus 350 dog? I think he should be, like, plus 280, personally, plus 250. I just, like, that's kind of extreme for me, so maybe Vegas knows something we don't. But Sandhagen should be able to take this one. He'll get it by decision. Again, the ultimate gatekeeper to the top 3. Corey Sandhagen should be able to win this fight pretty decisively. So we're taking Corey Sandhagen in the main event here from Des Moines, Iowa to close out this UFC Fight Night card. Folks, thank y'all for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. We'll be back next week for UFC 315 from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Jack Della Maddalena gets his shot at the champ, Bilal, remember the name Muhammad. We'll get to that fight and much more. And also tomorrow, make sure to join us for our PFL 4 predictions as well with the light heavyweights and the heavyweights. Folks, thank y'all for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy. Make sure to comment if you do disagree with any of the picks. Folks, thank y'all for watching. And Mamba forever.